Now, let me move to Marc. Marc, again, your perspective. One of the things that we were discussing also during the briefing, you had some views to share maybe in terms of, what makes sense in terms of, sole sourcing project and competitive bidding processes. So maybe you can touch on that briefly, but why don't you tell us about some of the challenges that you see in developing projects in the continent?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm Marc, I'm heading Themis Energy, which is Abra's group equity platform development company out of Dubai. So it's true, we saw economic growth slowing a bit down in Africa, but as it was said, it's mainly due to the oil price, so it was not really affecting the energy demand. The energy demand is still there regardless oil price. However, it created tension, budget tension, FX tension as well. I think the Naira is the effect of oil. So going beyond that, we still have some very positive, I think, message from the market the last couple of years. With the oil price going down, the gas price went down as well. And as we all know, we need baseload in Africa. And baseload, which was previously HFO and coal, now we see that gas is more and more something we are looking for. So this was maybe one good thing out of this oil price that created this slowdown in the economic growth. The second aspect is for all renewable energy. I think governments know and developers as well are looking at more and more different resources. We are looking at smaller hydro now versus the very large hydro we used to look at a few years ago. Geothermal is going well in the Rift Valley. As it was said, in terms of solar, the PV panel price was divided by 3 over the past few years. So I think we also have now more tools to play with as developer and to address the country grid, depending on the size of the grid and the baseload need. So this was, I think, very positive development. And I think in this specific aspect, developer and government are the one who are really looking at the best solution for the grid, which is the best, what is the best energy, the cheapest energy, the fastest to build. We have to combine all these to come with a solution. In terms of challenges, so of course, I can only agree with the timeline, the FX risk, and the regulation. Maybe something key for this group is just, I think, project development, it's still not recognized as a standalone investment stage. I think this is something missing from the framework with the government. So what is your status when you are spending cash and effort during 6 years? What is your protection? If there is no, at the end of the day, will you have a PPA or not? If you don't have a PPA, what will happen with all your studies and what is with the work you have produced? It is the same with the financing community, debt and equity. How did they recognize development efforts? How do we acknowledge the risk and reward matrix that is inherent to this stand-alone stage? It's not the same as the construction stage. And I think this is, the whole entire framework is really, I think, the main challenge. People start to get to it. I think IFC Venture and other people in the market start to bring some standards. But this is maybe something I wanted to point out. It's just the recognition and the framework as a standalone investment stage. How do we address this from the government side, from the investor side? So I think this was the main message, and this comes to the point maybe on procurement. There are single source procurement sometime, or direct negotiation, or we can go also through bidding, and I think it's also something to be looked at. I fully agree that the open book process is the one I think to go through. If we don't go through a bidding, it doesn't mean that there is no rule. We need to have rules, and I think the best rule at this point is just to work on open book basis. Everybody knows what is the cost of equity. Everybody knows what is the cost of debt. It is not that difficult to put financial model, then to go for bidding EPC and O&M, and then we have the tariff as an output instead of having tariff as an input, which is always creating issues because nobody is never sure that the tariff is the right one. So voilà, this was my first 2 cents to be continued.
Fantastic, Marc. Thank you very much. And certainly, I think it's very true that project development is not always acknowledged as a standalone investment stage, and it is. It's quite risky, and there are not too many protections that are afforded to developers at that stage. That's one of the things that IFC Infra Ventures is trying to do, is to join forces with developers and try to engage governments and say, look, if things don't happen, you need to offer protection to the developers. And that's something that as a project development community, we need to push that agenda. We really need to make it happen. And the other thing is that, what are some of the the remuneration, what is the upside that one should get if indeed after the development phase you are successful. Lenders are pushing back on development fees, but these are things that are necessary to make the project development community actually survive and thrive and make money, because the risks are very high. So maybe that's also one of the things that will be discussed during this conference.
Doing business in Africa, you can't afford to be without Africa Investor.